Kale stood at the edge of the massive observation window, staring down at the glowing blue depths of Neptune's spire. The city's underwater towers stretched like glass fingers into the ocean, lights twinkling like stars trapped beneath the waves. Despite the beauty, Kale felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the feeling of being small in a world designed for people who dared to dream big. Below, the currents moved swiftly, bending light and shadow into patterns that seemed alive. Kale had always loved water. He had grown up swimming in the shallow pools around the city's surface platforms, racing the natural currents, and imagining what lay beyond. But today was different. Today, he wasn't imagining. Today, he was about to be challenged by the one person in the city who seemed almost untouchable. Director Rylan. Rylan's reputation was the kind that made people either worship or fear him. He was brilliant, commanding, and enigmatic. A man who seemed to live in a different dimension from the rest of humanity. He had built Neptune's spire into a technological marvel, turning the city into the hub of underwater innovation. And yet, for all his power, he carried an unusual sense of playfulness, a dangerous kind that often hid challenges beneath polite words. Kale felt the weight of that playfulness as he remembered the meeting from this morning. "Kale," Rylan had said, leaning back in his high-backed chair, eyes glinting under the soft white light of the office. "I have a challenge for you." "A swim," Kale had raised an eyebrow. "A swim?" Rylan smiled, almost lazily. "Yes. Not just any swim. A race through the abyssal gauntlet. Win, and I will give you one night." Kale had paused, processing the words. The abyssal gauntlet was legendary, a treacherous underwater trench that cut through the city's perimeter. It was used to test the limits of humans and machines alike. Currents moved unpredictably, and advanced AI guardians patrolled the route, measuring every movement. Many had tried, and few had finished without help. "And what if I want more than one night?" Kale asked. He could feel his pulse quicken, not from fear, but excitement. Rylan's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of curiosity passing across his face. "More than one night?" Kale leaned forward, resting his palms on the sleek metal desk. "I want everything. Not just a night, not just a swim. I want to prove that humans, me, can do more than anyone thinks." For a moment, Rylan was silent. Then, slowly, a smile crept across his face. "Interesting," he said. "Very interesting. Then prepare yourself, Kale. The gauntlet awaits." Now, standing before the observation window, Kale felt the thrill of the challenge pulse through him. He wasn't just racing for a prize, he was racing for recognition, for the chance to show the world the untapped potential of humans. Machines could calculate, predict, and replicate. But humans could adapt, create, and improvise in ways no algorithm could. Kale turned from the window and walked to the training room. A vast space filled with advanced equipment. Machines hummed softly, scanning muscles, bones, and neural responses. He ran his hands over the control panels, adjusting settings, ready to push himself to the limits. The first weeks of training were grueling. Kale woke before dawn every day, diving into deep pools, swimming against mechanical currents that simulated the most dangerous parts of the gauntlet. He studied the AI patrol patterns, learning how they moved, predicting where they would react. He used simulation pods to practice maneuvers, timing every stroke, every breath, every twist and turn. But physical strength alone would not win the race. Kale spent hours on mental preparation, training his mind to stay calm under pressure, to anticipate the unexpected. Meditation, focus drills, memory exercises, everything was part of the plan. He knew the gauntlet would test him in ways that no machine could fully prepare him for. One evening, exhausted from hours of training, Kale sat on the edge of the pool and let the water envelop him. The surface shimmered above, reflecting the soft lights of the city. In the quiet, he imagined the race ahead. The currents would twist, the AI guardians would attack, and the trench itself would seem alive, trying to push him back. But he would not yield. He would not back down. What makes a human stronger than a machine? He asked himself quietly. The answer came instinctively. Flexibility. Creativity. The spark of intuition that could turn danger into opportunity. No algorithm could predict that, and that spark would be his advantage. Weeks passed, and Kale's training transformed him. His body became leaner, faster, stronger. His mind sharper, more precise. He could sense currents before they hit, predict AI patrol routes, and move instinctively. Fellow engineers watched him in awe, whispering about the impossible progress he was making. Kale only smiled quietly to himself. The real race had not begun yet. Finally, the day of the challenge arrived. The observation decks were filled with spectators, engineers, city officials, journalists, and curious citizens who had heard rumors of the upcoming swim. The abyssal gauntlet yawned below, a deep scar in the ocean floor, illuminated by bioluminescent flora that painted the waters in shades of blue and green. Kale stood on the edge of the starting platform, his suit fitted perfectly, sensors aligned, breathing steady. He glanced to his side and saw Rylan, calm and composed, as if the race were merely a stroll through his office. Around them, the city seemed to hold its breath. The starting signal sounded, a deep, resonating tone that vibrated through the water. Rylan dove first, cutting through the currents with effortless grace. Kale followed immediately, muscles coiling and releasing in perfect rhythm, propelling him forward. The first section of the gauntlet was deceptively calm, but Kale knew better. He could feel the subtle shifts in water pressure, the almost imperceptible warning signs of the currents ahead. He adjusted his trajectory, slipping past AI sensors and using the environment to shield his movements. Rylan was fast, but Kale noticed something intriguing. The director relied heavily on experience and calculated maneuvers. Kale, however, thrived on improvisation. A sudden whirlpool formed ahead, threatening to pull him into the trench walls. Kale twisted, using a sharp fin of rock to redirect the current. Rylan followed, but Kale had already gained a slight edge. The real test was just beginning. As Kale swam deeper, the water darkened, and bioluminescent creatures swirled around him, their shapes creating illusions and distractions. The currents grew violent, threatening to push him back, to slow him down. But Kale's training kicked in. He anticipated the turbulence, adjusted his strokes, and moved with a fluidity that made the impossible seem effortless. Somewhere deep in the trench, Kale realized the truth about the gauntlet. It wasn't just a physical challenge. It was a test of humanity itself. Machines and AI could navigate with precision, but humans had creativity, intuition, and audacity. Those qualities were unpredictable, unstoppable, and undeniable. Kale grinned beneath his mask. This race wasn't just about winning. It was about proving that humans could achieve more than anyone believed. As the trench stretched ahead, Kale surged forward, feeling the pull of the ocean, the thrill of the challenge, and the fire of ambition burning inside him. He didn't just want a night. He wanted everything, and nothing, not currents, not AI, not even Rylan himself, would stop him. Kale woke before the first light touched the surface of Neptune's spire. The city's towers glimmered faintly through the thick ocean water, and the quiet hum of life below the waves gave him a sense of calm determination. Today would not be easy. Today, he would push his body and mind farther than ever before. He slipped into the training pool, its water perfectly filtered and glowing softly from embedded bioluminescent lights. The pool was enormous, long enough to simulate the twisting currents of the abyssal gauntlet. Around him, machines whirred softly, scanning his body, monitoring every movement. Sensors mapped his heart rate, his stroke efficiency, the tiniest micro-muscle movements. Kale inhaled deeply and dove in, cutting through the water with a smooth rhythm. His strokes were precise, but he was not just swimming. He was learning. Each kick, each arm pull was calculated to improve efficiency, conserve energy, and prepare for the unpredictable forces of the gauntlet. The AI trainers projected holographic obstacles in the water, twisting currents, jagged rock formations, and streams of fast-moving debris. Kale reacted instinctively, weaving through them with a combination of agility and foresight. He began to understand the subtle rhythms of water, the way currents shifted unexpectedly, and how even the smallest movement could alter his trajectory. Faster, Kale whispered to himself, forcing his muscles to respond with more power. His lungs burned, and every nerve in his body screamed to stop, but he refused. Pain was temporary. Mastery was permanent. Outside the pool, his fellow engineers watched. Some with admiration, some with disbelief. Kale was not only enduring the hardest training sessions, but improving faster than anyone expected. He was discovering something new about humans. The ability to learn, adapt, and create solutions on the fly. Machines might follow patterns perfectly, but they could not improvise when the unexpected struck. After 2 hours, Kale emerged from the pool, water dripping from his hair and suit. He paused, catching his breath, and walked over to the neural training pod, a sleek chamber filled with soft blue light. Inside, he would practice mental agility, memory exercises, and reaction drills. He sat down, placing his head in the soft neural interface. A holographic landscape appeared before his eyes, a simulation of the gauntlet itself. Currents twisted unpredictably. AI guardians shifted positions, and bioluminescent predators darted in patterns that required careful observation. Kale began moving through the simulation. Every choice was a test. Turn left, right, or wait for the current to shift. The AI calculated probabilities with perfect accuracy. But Kale's mind operated differently. He relied on intuition, imagination, and creativity. He saw paths where none seemed to exist, shortcuts that the algorithms never considered. Good, the pod's AI voice said after a long session. Your predictive models are improving, but your adaptability is exceptional. Kale smiled. That's the point, he said. Humans could do what machines could not. Machines could calculate, but humans could imagine. They could see possibilities beyond logic and rules. That was his edge. That was why he would win. Hours passed, and Kale moved between the pool and the neural pod, training body and mind in perfect harmony. He experimented with new techniques, combining strokes, adjusting breathing patterns, and even learning to feel the currents rather than seeing them. He developed a subtle connection with the water, as if he could sense its mood, its hidden force, and its secret paths. One evening, exhausted but exhilarated, Kale floated in the pool, staring at the soft light above. A thought struck him. The gauntlet was not just a physical challenge, it was a test of creativity, of human spirit. No matter how advanced the AI guardians were, no matter how unpredictable the currents, he could adapt. Humans thrived where others failed. They could make choices that no machine could predict. Kale, a voice called from the observation deck. It was Lyra, one of the engineers assigned to assist him. She was young, smart, and fiercely supportive, always ready with advice or encouragement. You need rest. You're pushing too hard. I'm not done, Kale replied, his voice steady. Rest won't help me now. I need to learn every movement, every reaction. The gauntlet won't wait. Lyra shook her head, smiling despite herself. You're unbelievable. But just don't forget to eat. Kale laughed softly and returned to his training. He knew she was right. In part, he needed to take care of his body, but he also knew that the edge he was building came from relentless practice. Every extra hour of training, every drop of sweat, every mental exercise was a step closer to victory. Over the next few days, Kale began experimenting with unconventional methods. He practiced navigating blindfolded, relying only on his senses of touch and sound to detect currents. He learned to predict the movements of AI guardians by subtle cues in the water, their shadows, and the faint vibration of their patrols. He even practiced using small tools and devices to manipulate the environment, redirecting currents, triggering harmless distractions, and creating paths that machines would overlook. The engineers watching him were amazed. "He's turning instinct into skill," one whispered. "No one else could do this." Kale paid little attention to their words. He was focused on one thing: becoming more than ordinary. He was discovering that humans had potential beyond measure. A human could think, adapt, and act in ways that machines could not predict. That was his strength, and he would use it to his advantage. Evenings were the hardest. When fatigue set in and the city above seemed quiet and distant, Kale pushed himself further. He ran through simulation after simulation, each one more complex than the last. Currents shifted violently, obstacles moved unpredictably, and AI guardians reacted with perfect precision. Yet Kale found ways through each challenge, not by brute force, but by ingenuity. He discovered paths that no algorithm had predicted, solutions that came from intuition and creativity. "Humans," he whispered to himself, floating in the deep blue pool. "We are more than what they think. We can do more than survive. We can thrive." As the days turned into weeks, Kale's confidence grew. His body was stronger, his mind sharper, and his spirit unyielding. He could feel the gauntlet calling to him, its dark depths waiting for someone bold enough to face it. And he was ready, not just for a night, not just for a swim, but for everything that awaited him beyond the city's safe walls. One morning, Kale arrived at the training facility to find Rylan waiting. The director stood silently, observing him. Kale stopped mid-stride. "You've improved," Rylan said finally, his voice calm but with a hint of approval. "Faster, stronger, more adaptable than I expected." Kale nodded, measuring the distance between them. "I told you, I want everything. Not just a night, not just a swim. I want to prove what humans can do." Rylan's eyes flickered, a shadow of amusement crossing his face. "Bold words. Let's see if your actions match them." And so, Kale's final preparations began. He would not only train his body and mind, but also plan, strategize, and learn the hidden rules of the gauntlet. Every current, every predator, every AI guardian would be studied and anticipated. He would approach the race not just as a challenge, but as a proving ground for humanity itself. That night, as he rested in his quarters, Kale could feel the thrill of anticipation. The gauntlet was not just a test, it was a stage. And on that stage, he would show the world what humans were capable of when they refused to accept limits. He closed his eyes, imagining the deep blue currents, the twists and turns of the trench, and the race that awaited him. He imagined not just surviving, but conquering, not just winning a night, but claiming everything. And in the quiet darkness, Kale made a promise to himself. No matter the danger, no matter the challenge, he would rise. Humans were more than machines. Humans were clever, adaptable, and unstoppable. And Kale would prove it. The day of the race arrived. The water outside Neptune's spire glimmered under the artificial lights of the city, soft ripples moving across the ocean surface. Kale stood on the starting platform, feeling the familiar pulse of excitement in his chest. The abyssal gauntlet stretched before him, dark and vast, its depths disappearing into shadows that seemed to breathe. Rylan waited beside him, calm as always, his eyes scanning the trench with the practiced confidence of someone who had conquered challenges like this before. Around the platform, a crowd of spectators floated in submersible pods or hovered on observation decks. The atmosphere was tense and electric, as if the ocean itself anticipated the race. Kale's heart pounded. Not with fear, but with exhilaration. This was it, the culmination of weeks of training, preparation, and human ingenuity. Everything he had done had led to this moment, and yet, he knew the real test was just beginning. A deep resonant tone sounded, echoing through the water and vibrating against the platform. Kale took a deep breath and dove. The cold water embraced him as he cut through it, each stroke precise, powerful, and controlled. The first section of the gauntlet was relatively calm, a deceptive prelude to the dangers ahead. Kale moved quickly, weaving around towering rock formations and schools of curious bioluminescent fish, but he knew better than to be complacent. The gauntlet was designed to challenge every sense and skill of a swimmer. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and the race could end. Ryland surged ahead, slicing through the currents with effortless precision. But Kale did not panic. He remembered his training. Every movement, every decision, had been rehearsed. But he also trusted his instincts. The AI guardians patrolled the area, small hovering devices that scanned for movement. But Kale anticipated their behavior. He moved in patterns they could not predict, slipping through gaps, using shadows and obstacles as cover. The deeper he went, the darker the water became. The light from Neptune's spire barely penetrated this far. And strange, glowing creatures swam in silent arcs around him. Their movements were mesmerizing, almost hypnotic, but Kale kept his focus. He had learned to observe without distraction, to notice the subtle shifts in water currents, and to use them to his advantage. Suddenly, a strong current surged from the side, threatening to push him into a jagged wall of rock. Kale reacted instinctively, twisting his body, grabbing a small protrusion in the rock face, and redirecting himself. The maneuver required perfect timing, and a second too late could have been disastrous. He felt the thrill of survival surge through him, a reminder that the gauntlet was alive, challenging him at every moment. Rylan was close, moving with the confidence of experience. But Kale noticed something important. The director's movements, though precise, were predictable in their perfection. Kale, on the other hand, was unpredictable. He adapted with creativity, intuition, and speed. That was the difference. As he advanced, the gauntlet introduced its next challenge. A twisting corridor of bioluminescent flora that created illusions of depth and distance. Kale had practiced for this. He used the shadows, the currents, and even the reflections of light to navigate the corridor, avoiding traps set to confuse and slow him. His body moved almost on instinct now, each stroke flowing seamlessly into the next, guided by both training and intuition. Then, the AI guardians grew more aggressive. They hovered in strategic positions, emitting pulses of energy designed to slow him down. Kale dodged, ducked, and swerved, using every trick he had learned. At one point, he even manipulated the current with a small device he had designed, sending a pulse that briefly disoriented the AI. It was risky, but effective. The machines could calculate patterns, but they could not predict human ingenuity. Kale felt a rush of satisfaction as he gained a slight lead. Not that the race was about competition with Rylan alone, it was a proving ground for humanity itself. Every move he made demonstrated human adaptability, courage, and creativity. Machines could follow rules, humans could rewrite them. Midway through the gauntlet, Kale faced a series of underwater arches, each one narrower than the last. Currents swirled violently around the arches, making navigation difficult. He paused for a fraction of a second, reading the water, feeling the subtle shifts and eddies. Then he surged forward, twisting his body in a way no AI could predict. The currents slammed against him, but he flowed with them, letting the water guide him rather than fight it. Through the arches, KL entered a chamber where a massive whirlpool spun, pulling everything toward its center. Many swimmers before him had been trapped here. KL's training kicked in. He timed his movements perfectly, using the edges of the whirlpool to gain momentum while avoiding being drawn into its deadly center. He could feel the strength of the water, the immense power of the ocean pressing against him, but he remained calm. Humans thrived under pressure. He thrived under pressure. As he exited the whirlpool, Kale glimpsed Rylan ahead. The director moved with precision, but Kale could see a faint hesitation. Even Rylan, for all his experience, could not anticipate every subtle twist of the gauntlet. That gave Kale an edge. The final stretch of the first major section approached, a long, narrow tunnel filled with strange, glowing organisms. Their light created illusions, making the tunnel appear longer, shorter, or twisted in impossible ways. Kale relied on memory and intuition, remembering the patterns he had studied during training. He moved steadily, ignoring the distractions, letting his instincts guide him. Halfway through the tunnel, A sudden surge of water pushed him sideways. Kale adjusted immediately, spinning through the current and using a jagged rock wall to gain leverage. The AI guardians followed, but he anticipated their next moves, slipping through their formation and gaining precious seconds. Finally, Kale burst from the tunnel into an open chamber, where the currents flowed more predictably but the challenges became physical. Massive rocks shifted constantly, creating a moving maze. He darted between them, leaping over obstacles, sliding under others, and using his body's strength and agility to navigate the chamber. Every movement was precise, yet fluid. Every decision was a choice only a human could make. Rylan followed, moving with skill, but Kale noticed the small differences in his approach. Rylan relied on experience and calculation, while Kale combined learned skill with instinctive creativity. That made him unpredictable. And in this race, unpredictability was power. As Kale swam through the chamber, he realized he was beginning to feel something extraordinary. The flow of the water was almost like a partner, moving with him, responding to his shifts in position. He had trained not only his body and mind but his senses. He could feel currents before they hit, anticipate obstacles, and adjust in ways that felt almost instinctual. Emerging from the chamber, Kale paused briefly to catch his breath. The first section of the gauntlet was complete, but the real challenges were still ahead. He glanced toward Rylan, who was not far behind, and smiled. This was more than a race. This was a demonstration of human potential adaptability, ingenuity, and courage in the face of impossible odds. Kale dove again, pushing himself into the next section of the gauntlet. Here, the currents would twist violently. Bioluminescent predators would dart in unpredictable paths, and the AI guardians would become relentless. But Kale did not fear them. He had trained for this, learned from every mistake, and discovered the untapped potential within himself. With each stroke, Kale felt the thrill of the challenge, the excitement of testing his limits. Every twist of his body, every adjustment to the currents, was a demonstration of what humans could achieve. Machines could calculate. Humans could imagine. Humans could adapt. Humans could conquer. And Kale intended to prove it. The water grew darker as Kale swam deeper into the abyssal gauntlet. The first sections had been a test of skill, speed, and instinct, but now the true challenge awaited. Here, the currents twisted violently, the walls of rock narrowed and shifted, and the AI guardians became relentless. This was where many had failed. This was where Kale would prove the full power of human ingenuity. Kale tightened his grip on his small utility device strapped to his arm, ready to manipulate currents or create diversions if needed. His muscles burned from the previous sections, but he refused to slow down. He had trained for this. Every stroke, every movement had been honed for moments like this. Humans thrived under pressure, and Kale was about to show just how unstoppable they could be. The first obstacle was a sudden vertical drop in the trench. Water surged downward like a liquid wall, dragging debris and glowing flora with it. Kale took a deep breath and leaped into the current, twisting his body to ride the wave instead of fighting it. The drop threw him toward a narrow opening between jagged rocks. He felt the pressure of the water pushing him from all directions, but instinct guided him. With a sharp kick and a roll, he slipped through the gap, narrowly avoiding collision with the jagged walls. Behind him, the hum of the AI guardians grew louder. Their sensors pulsed with energy, tracking him, predicting his movements. But Kale was no longer just reacting, he was creating opportunities. He used the walls of the trench to redirect the current, generating a small vortex that briefly confused the AI. They adjusted, but it cost them precious time. Kale surged ahead, heart pounding, mind razor-sharp. The next section was even more dangerous. The gauntlet narrowed into a twisting corridor, lined with sharp stalactites and glowing organisms that emitted blinding flashes. The creature's light created illusions, making walls appear closer or farther than they were. Many swimmers had panicked here, colliding with rock walls or misjudging the current. Kale relied on his intuition and training. He ignored the flashes, focusing instead on subtle cues. The way water moved around obstacles, the faint vibrations of currents, and the silent signals from his device that tracked AI patrols. A sudden surge of bioluminescent predators darted toward him, their movements swift and erratic. Kale's heart raced, but he reacted with fluid precision. He twisted, dodged, and accelerated through a narrow passage, letting the predators' momentum carry them past. The AI guardians adjusted immediately, sending pulses to block his path. Kale countered, using a clever redirection of the water current to confuse them once more. Each move required perfect timing and instinct, and each success reinforced a simple truth. Humans could adapt where machines could not. Suddenly, the trench widened, and Kale entered an open chamber. The currents here were violent, swirling unpredictably, creating miniature whirlpools and eddies. The chamber's walls glimmered with bioluminescent patterns, creating a mesmerizing, almost hypnotic effect. Most swimmers would pause here, overwhelmed by the chaos. But Kale moved steadily. He had trained for this. He had practiced reading currents, predicting shifts, and moving with the water instead of against it. Kale pushed forward, using every ounce of strength and agility. His mind worked as fast as his body, calculating paths that were not just efficient, but creative. He leveraged the unpredictable nature of the currents, letting them propel him while guiding himself through the safest and fastest route. He felt a surge of exhilaration. This was what being human meant: creativity, courage, and adaptability, combined in perfect harmony. Through the chaos, KL glimpsed Rylan ahead. The director moved with skill, but there was a faint hesitation. Kale realized that experience alone could not overcome creativity and intuition. The gauntlet demanded more than mastery. It demanded the ability to improvise and adapt. And in that, Kale had the advantage. The chamber led to a narrow passage filled with shifting rocks. Large boulders floated and rotated, pushed by hidden currents. One wrong move could crush a swimmer or block the path entirely. Kale observed carefully. He calculated timing, adjusted his strokes, and twisted his body through gaps that seemed impossible. One boulder shifted unexpectedly, but Kale reacted instantly, using the momentum of the water to slide under it, narrowly avoiding disaster. Behind him, the AI guardians pursued relentlessly. Their pulses grew stronger, more precise, but Kale had learned to anticipate them. He executed a daring maneuver, redirecting a strong current toward the AI devices. They were momentarily thrown off balance, allowing him to surge ahead. He could feel the power of human creativity, of thinking outside the limits imposed by machines. No algorithm could predict this. Exiting the narrow passage, Kale entered a chamber that was almost vertical, a waterfall of water pouring from above, crashing down into a swirling pool. The AI guardians patrolled aggressively, and the predators of the deep moved unpredictably through the currents. Kale inhaled deeply and dove. He allowed the water to carry him downward, twisting and turning, adjusting to the momentum, and guiding himself with precise movements. The waterfall was violent, but Kale flowed with it, letting instinct and skill combine seamlessly. As he reached the bottom, he felt a sense of triumph. He had navigated the most dangerous sections of the gauntlet so far, but he knew the real challenge remained ahead. The final stretch would push him to the edge of human endurance. Currents, predators, AI guardians, and the terrain itself would demand every skill he had developed. Kale paused for a moment, floating in the glowing blue water. He felt the power of the gauntlet around him, the challenge, the danger, and the opportunity. This was more than a race. This was a proving ground for human ingenuity. Humans could think, adapt, and create in ways that no machine could match. And Kale was living proof. He surged forward again, entering the final section of the first major chamber. The currents became unpredictable, twisting and turning with sudden force. Large predators darted through the water, and the AI guardians intensified their efforts, surrounding him from multiple angles. But Kale remained calm. He had trained for this. He had anticipated the unexpected. He moved with precision and intuition, using the currents, rocks, and creatures to his advantage. A massive whirlpool appeared ahead, one of the gauntlet's final tests. Most swimmers froze here. Unable to resist the force, Kale studied the water, feeling the subtle shifts in pressure and movement. He used the edges of the whirlpool to gain momentum, spinning through the currents and avoiding being drawn into the center. It was a dangerous gamble. But Kale's training and instinct guided him perfectly. Emerging from the whirlpool, Kale saw Rylan struggling slightly behind. The director moved with skill, but Kale could sense a subtle difference. He was beginning to outpace the unbeatable. It was not arrogance that gave Kale this confidence, but the evidence of human potential. Creativity, adaptability, and determination. Machines could calculate. Humans could conquer. Kale pushed forward, muscles burning, lungs screaming for air, but his mind sharp and focused. The final corridor of the section was narrow, with jagged walls and strong currents designed to test endurance. Kale twisted, ducked, and propelled himself through the opening, emerging into a wider chamber where the currents flowed more predictably. He took a brief moment to adjust, knowing the final challenge awaited. For the first time, Kale felt the full power of what he had discovered during training. He was not just strong or fast. He was adaptable, creative, and fearless. The gauntlet was a test of limits, and he had found that humans could exceed any expectation. Looking ahead, Kale realized he was no longer just participating in the race. He was leading it. He had outpaced the unbeatable, not through raw power, but through ingenuity and determination. This was what humans could do when they refused to accept limits. The next stretch would be even more dangerous. Twisting currents, sharper rocks, and more aggressive AI guardians awaited. But Kale smiled. He had proven one undeniable truth. Humans were more than what anyone expected, and he would continue to prove it. One stroke at a time. The final stretch of the abyssal gauntlet loomed ahead, darker and more treacherous than anything Kale had faced so far. The currents twisted violently, jagged rocks jutted from every direction, and AI guardians hovered in perfect formations, prepared to block or redirect any swimmer. The chamber was enormous, open, but every step through it felt like navigating a storm. Kale's muscles screamed with exhaustion, his lungs burned from exertion, yet his mind remained razor-sharp. He had trained for this, endured the impossible, and discovered the untapped potential within himself. The race was no longer about speed alone, it was about ingenuity, adaptability, and the sheer force of human will. Rylan was close behind, gliding through the water with practiced precision. The director's experience was formidable, but Kale noticed a subtle difference. Rylan relied heavily on predictable skill, while Kale's movements were fluid, creative, and unpredictable. That unpredictability gave him an edge. Humans could improvise in ways machines and experts could not anticipate. That was his power. Kale focused on the currents, feeling them, reading them, almost as if the water itself whispered secrets to him. He spotted a narrow passageway on the left, barely visible between two jagged rocks. It was risky, but Kale recognized an opportunity. The passage would give him a shortcut, a chance to outmaneuver Rylan and the AI guardians. He shifted his course, twisting through the opening with careful precision. The current slammed against him from the side, but he used it to propel himself forward. Behind him, the AI guardians reacted immediately, sending pulses to slow him down. Kale anticipated this. He maneuvered through the water, creating turbulence that disrupted their signals and allowed him to surge ahead. The gauntlet's final test awaited, a towering vertical shaft that plunged deep into darkness. The water swirled violently, creating whirlpools and eddies, while bioluminescent predators darted unpredictably around him. This was where many had failed, giving up to fear or exhaustion. But Kale thrived here. He took a deep breath and dove into the shaft, twisting his body to ride the currents. The whirlpools tried to drag him into the walls, but Kale flowed with the water, guiding himself with the instincts and skills he had honed through weeks of preparation. He dodged predators, anticipated the currents, and moved with precision that combined training and intuition. Rylan followed, but Kale could sense hesitation. The director relied on experience, But Kale relied on instinct and creativity. He twisted through a narrow spiral, using the pressure of the water to gain speed while forcing the AI guardians to readjust. The pulse of adrenaline surged through him, but he focused, calculating every movement, every possible outcome. At last, Kale emerged from the vertical shaft into the final chamber. The chamber was vast, lit by glowing organisms embedded in the walls. Currents flowed chaotically, and massive rocks shifted in patterns that demanded constant attention. He could see the finish line, a glowing beacon at the far end of the chamber, but reaching it would not be simple. The AI guardians intensified their pursuit, moving in perfect formation to block his path. Predators darted unpredictably, and the currents threatened to push him backward. But Kale did not hesitate. He combined everything he had learned, his strength, his speed, his intuition, his creativity, and navigated the chamber with unmatched skill. He twisted through currents, ducked under floating rocks, and surged past AI guardians who struggled to predict his movements. He used the environment to his advantage, redirecting water flow, exploiting shadows, and creating paths that machines could not anticipate. Every stroke was calculated, yet instinctive. Every movement was precise, yet creative. Humans were capable of brilliance beyond expectation, and Kale was proving it. Rylan approached the chamber, moving with skill. But Kale had already gained a decisive lead. The director's eyes widened as he realized the human in front of him was not just surviving the gauntlet, he was dominating it. Kale's creativity, adaptability, and courage had overcome experience and technology. This was the essence of humanity at its finest. The final obstacle was a swirling vortex of currents that spanned the width of the chamber. Most swimmers would freeze here, paralyzed by the force and complexity. Kale hesitated for a fraction of a second, feeling the pressure. But he did not falter. He analyzed the vortex, read the subtle shifts, and calculated the best path. Then, with a sudden surge, he twisted and propelled himself through the currents, flowing with the water instead of fighting it. The vortex tried to pull him off course, but Kale's instincts and skill guided him perfectly. Behind him, Rylan struggled against the same vortex, while the AI guardians attempted to block both paths. But Kale's ingenuity had already given him the advantage. He emerged on the other side of the vortex, chest heaving, limbs burning, yet moving with controlled precision. The finish line was just ahead. Kale felt the thrill of triumph coursing through him. He had faced every challenge the gauntlet had presented: currents, predators, AI guardians, and treacherous terrain, and had adapted, improvised, and conquered. Humans could think, adapt, and create in ways machines and even the most experienced experts could not. That was the truth he had proven. With a final burst of energy, Kale surged forward, crossing the finish line. A brilliant flash of light illuminated the chamber as sensors recorded his success. The spectators above Neptune's spire erupted in cheers, their voices muffled but joyous through the water. Kale had done the impossible. He had outpaced the unbeatable, mastered the gauntlet, and demonstrated the limitless potential of human ingenuity. Rylan arrived moments later, breathing steadily but clearly impressed. He floated before Kale, a rare smile crossing his face. "I underestimated you," he admitted. "You were exceptional." Kyle shook his head, smiling back. "It wasn't about being exceptional. It was about proving what humans can do when we refuse to accept limits." Rylan regarded him silently for a moment, then nodded. "And you have proven it. As promised." He gestured to Kale's victory. "You may claim your reward." Kale's lips curled into a grin. "I said I wanted everything, not just a night," he reminded the director calmly. "And I intend to take it, not for myself alone, but for humanity. We can achieve more than anyone expects. We can thrive in ways no one imagines." Rylan's eyes glimmered with recognition, a hint of respect and curiosity. "Ambitious," he said. "Very well. You will have your chance to shape the city, to expand humanity's reach. You have earned it." Kale felt a rush of satisfaction, but not for personal gain alone. He had faced impossible challenges, pushed his body and mind beyond limits, and proved that humans could surpass even the most formidable obstacles. His triumph was a symbol of possibility, a testament to creativity, courage, and adaptability. The city above, glowing through the ocean, seemed to respond to his victory. Lights shimmered, and distant towers reflected the achievement of a human who had dared to dream bigger than anyone else. Kale floated in the chamber for a moment, feeling the currents, the water, and the power of his own determination. "Humans," he whispered. "We are more than we know. We are unstoppable. When we refuse to accept limits." Ryland finally broke the silence. "You have changed the rules of the gauntlet," he said, almost thoughtfully. "And perhaps, in doing so, you have changed the way we see humanity itself." Kale nodded. He knew the real journey had only begun. The gauntlet was a proving ground, a test of limits. But the world outside Neptune's spire offered countless challenges. Yet he was ready. He had learned that the human mind and body, when pushed to the edge, could achieve feats no one thought possible. And that knowledge, that power, would guide him toward every new challenge ahead. As he ascended toward the city's surface, Kale allowed himself a moment to look back at the abyssal gauntlet. Its dark waters, twisting currents, and deadly chambers were no longer a threat, they were a triumph. He had conquered the impossible, outwitted the unbeatable, and emerged stronger, faster, and wiser. The spectators cheered louder, sensing the victory not just of one man, but of the human spirit itself. Kale had not merely won a race. He had proven that humans could thrive where others might fail, that ingenuity and courage could overcome even the most formidable obstacles, and that no limit was absolute. Standing on the observation platform, dripping from the gauntlet but alive with energy, Kale faced Rylan. "This is just the beginning," he said. "Not for me, but for everyone. Humans are capable of more than anyone has imagined, and I intend to show it." Rylan's smile was small but genuine. "Then go, Kale. Take your victory. Shape your world. Show us all what humanity can do." Kale looked out over the glowing towers of Neptune's spire, the deep blue ocean stretching endlessly beyond. He had faced the impossible, mastered it, and emerged victorious. He had not just claimed a night or a prize, he had claimed everything. And in that moment, Kale realized the most powerful truth. Humans were not limited by fear, by machines, or by the rules of others. They were limited only by imagination, courage, and the willingness to act. And with those, anything was possible. The future lay before him, vast, unexplored, and filled with endless opportunity. Kale smiled. Humanity would rise, thrive, and conquer challenges no one had thought possible. And he would be at the forefront, leading the way. The abyssal gauntlet had been conquered, humanity had been proven, and Kale had claimed everything.